Sanele has a background in the industry. He was with SAB for a number of years, where he was alcohol policy manager. And this afternoon, he'll be reflecting on collaborations and community-owned solutions being critical components for any real impact to be realized. And he's a gentleman I haven't seen in a number of years. It's lovely to see you again. You're looking good. How's the family? Is it good? I'm sure we'll be able to hear you shortly, but it's fine.
It's good.
To see you, man.
Good to see you again.
Good
Been a while.
It has been a while. Where have you been?
Been in Cape Town. In the Premier's office for the last 2.5 years.
She's been keeping you busy, hey?
Very busy, yeah.
I look forward to your talk, man.
Thank you, man. Okay. So, 5 seconds. So, good afternoon, everyone. I must say, Rashik, your curatorship skills are quite good, because I must say that video and this speaker before seems like an elaborate build-up to my presentation. So I hope I don't disappoint. And no, Andy, I do not want to go to court with you. That's why I hope some of the work we've done will show you that we certainly try our best. But in a very challenging environment. But we certainly don't need to be taken to court to do things, you know. Can I go ahead? Okay. So firstly, I'd like to say what I'm going to talk to you about is really just some of our experiences. So we're not experts. We haven't proven anything yet. We're still in the initial stages. We're starting to see some impact. But what we certainly have done is just started trying to do something different, and that's what the Premier has been about in this last term of office, is really just trying a different way of doing things, and I'll tell you a little bit about that later. But so, as Africa said, you know, before I worked for South African breweries, I used to work for British American Tobacco, and then I went over to South African breweries, and you know, and then I was heading up corporate affairs. So what started to happen in my life is that I started to see that, you know, like over 40% of rapes in South Africa were committed against children. And I started to work in these big companies and heading up corporate affairs. Then I started to ask myself, you know, what has that got to do with me? You know, what is the 40% of rapes happening to children got to do with me and the product that I sell? And there was a lot of introspection, because one day, and I'll share a lot of anecdotes to just paint a picture in terms of the work that I do today. I was working for SAB, and we'd walked into an outlet to apply for a liquor license. And we had walked in with a consultant, a high-price consultant. We had walked in, and then on our way out, he says, you know, for a liquor license application, you need 2 entrances in our township. So one for the home and one for the tavern. So as we walk out, he says, you know, as we walk out of the tavern entrance, he says, you know, these windows on the wall of this house are going to be a problem. So I say to him, but why? Because there's a separate entrance to go into the house and there's a separate entrance to go to the tavern. He says, listen, at 11 o'clock at night, when someone's consumed too much alcohol and they're walking past this window and they're looking and they look into the window and someone is sleeping there, you know, whether it's a woman or a child, you can imagine the sort of things that might happen. So then I started realizing, you know what, I might just be working with alcohol, but I'm actually dealing with broader societal issues. So this becomes my problem. Then, obviously, that was my problem. 50% of SA road deaths can be attributed to alcohol consumption. And of course, some of these issues also, the perpetrators is sometimes under the influence of alcohol. More than 25% of South Africans' drinking population are considered to be binge drinkers. Again, my job and my role in the company that I was in would tell you that there's a small percentage of those drinkers, though. So, because South Africa is mostly abstaining, are mostly abstainers. So it's a small percentage of that. So that's 25% of a very small percentage. In those days, it used to be 10%. I don't know what it is today. South Africa's youth unemployment rate is 38%. Again, you know, what did this have to do with me? But of course, the guys that were not at work were drinking my product. And then 53 children under the age of 5 die in South Africa every day for various reasons. In 2014, 7 million South Africans reported that they went hungry as they had no access to food. Again, why my problem? Because they were purchasing my product before they were buying food. So this was my problem, and I needed to get my head around how then as a company do we start solving these issues and not just say we're going to solve alcohol-related issues. Then I started grappling with this idea of this, is this actually, because we used to talk about this reality, the reality of our country, that we got this, we got that, we got these issues, but I was sitting in a corner office in Newlands, and I was living in Hart Bay. Africa, as you asked where I've been living in Hart Bay, and I thought, is this my reality? Was it? It wasn't, because we were sitting in big boardrooms, coming up with desktop exercises and desktop strategies, but were we really in the communities, understanding what the realities were? So certainly, when we came into this game changer, so I've framed some of the issues that we had, and you'll see how we then tackle certain things in the game changer that ultimately we hope has a reduction in alcohol abuse. So we said, I'm tired of this, because alcohol abuse wasn't happening in my office, it was happening in the community. So I want to look into a community and look at a community that is quite small, quite tight, and then look at what it offered. So we went into Khayelitsha, which is right, those images that Andy showed you are literally just above there, Silvertown. So we were in Khayelitsha, Sector 4. Why Sector 4? That is a policing precinct. Why do I choose a policing precinct? Because I know what I'm doing, I can have a direct access to crime stats and know if what I'm doing is making an impact. So that's why we chose this specific area. And these are 3 communities, so in Griffiths and Mhlanga, Graceland, and then Egopumleni. But then, and there was this notion that, our townships and government doesn't work because our townships don't have recreational facilities. Guess what? Olympic-sized swimming pool in this area. It's not open half the time, but it's an Olympic-sized swimming pool that is blue, okay, provided by the city of Cape Town. There's a cricket field, full floodlit cricket field in this area. Netball court, floodlit. Multipurpose center, basketball court. There's a mall right about there. There's a hospital right there, and there's a train station. So it had all the amenities where I thought if we walk in here and crowd in a lot of interventions and initiatives, we can start seeing that, we're making an impact where people have things and facilities. So, of course, we need to walk in and do some sort of get some sort of a baseline. So we went in December 2016, and we walked in, and 35% of the community said that they feel safe at home at night. And then 32 of them said that they feel safe on the streets in the day, and then 57 of them said that 54% said that they had confidence in police. So we walked in there and said, we're going to test a few things, okay? What are we going to do, and what are we going to test? So we walked in and I said, let's put in some 8 high-mast cameras. Now, you might ask me, why did they go in and put high-mast cameras in? There's something that I've always believed. I could never understand. I could always go for a drink in Long Street, okay? Have a drink with a friend of mine. We're having a drink, and if we get into some sort of a argument, that argument never escalates into a stabbing and then into someone in an emergency center. Why? Because if we are in an outlet and we start raising our voices, there's a bouncer in place in case something happens. If a bouncer doesn't see us, guess what? The owner's there and is going to intervene. Look, say that doesn't happen. We walk outside. There's cameras in Long Street that can pick up some sort of activity that's not normal. Heck, say the cameras miss us. You know what? There's a safety kiosk and CCID in place to see that there's a sort of a disturbance. Let's go stop it. In Khayelitsha, that's not the case. Very quickly, a misunderstanding between two people having a drink lands up in an emergency center, either murder or culpable homicide, because the infrastructure is not in place to prevent something from escalating. So that's why we went high-mast cameras. I needed to see what's happening on the ground and be able to respond to it. And also that's why I put in 12 dedicated law enforcement officers. Again, if we pick something up on the cameras, there's no use if there's no one there to respond, right? So we put in 12 dedicated law enforcement officers by the city in that area. We also then looked at putting in Western Cape Liquor Authority inspectors, because we needed people to go and enforce the law in the liquor outlets that were in this area. This area that we chose had guess what? Had 59 liquor selling outlets. 2 square kilometer area, 59 liquor selling outlets. However, in that area, 6 of them were legal. The rest are illegal. So, and this is something that, you know, I've been grappling with for a long time, is how this synergistic relationship between the illegals and legals in our townships actually works fantastic for my previous employer, because they go and dump alcohol at the 6 outlets, and those 6 outlets redistribute to the 56. There's demand, it works. So how do we break that? So then we said, it's illogical, right? But you need to legalize. You need to level the playing field, just like it's had done in Long Street, just like it's done on this side of the world. You can drink alcohol, you know, within a 1 kilometer radius, there's liquor licenses that are here, but there's not a lot of incidents that occurred to the abuse. So we then said we would assist some of these some of those illegals become legal, but then you enforce heavily. Then we also realized, you know, we needed to sort of keep the guys busy, because some of these guys, I'm certainly not saying, you know, they must now be they must not go to a tavern or a shebeen, but at least spend less time there. So, how do we keep them busy? Recreational alternatives. We need to give them alternatives that keep them busy. But as we all know, in our townships, it's not about just keeping busy. It's actually about things that will have an economic benefit. So whatever thing we put them into, it needs to be able to give them an economic benefit. So we put in gaming center, we put in counselors in the area to ensure that we look after those people that are already suffering from the effects of alcohol abuse. Then we went and worked with community members, because the problems that they were facing need to be dealt with by them. They needed to be part of the community, just like they needed to be part of the process, just like Andy was saying earlier. And we registered them as an NPO, and they are able now to deal with some of the issues that they face. So what were the initial signs of impact? In May 2018, we did a survey, of which 24% of the community said they'd heard about the Game Changer. At the time we ran the survey, the comms campaign had only been running for about 3 months, so I'm told that 24% is quite a good number. That would not work in my previous employer. 24%? No. So they deal with 98 or 99%. So this was a good result. Then 74% compared to a year ago said that Sector 4 is a better place to live in. Now, the funny thing about safety is that it's like a perception. You may not be necessarily safe, but you just feel safer. And what it does to the community, it just creates this free movement, and people are able to start using recreational facilities and using things within their community. And it's all because 91% of them said that they were seeing the presence of law enforcement and police, and all of a sudden, the community changes. Now, what we've done, remember I told you we looked at Khayelitsha Sector 4, the historical crime trend, we went back as far as Q1 2014, and we've plotted all our interventions along this timeline here, and there is a downward trend after our initial work that we've put in there. But you see the dotted line is now a forecast that we use specialists and data analysts to give us based on this historic trend here. And they're saying crime should do that there with that line. So you can contact me in a year or so and see whether the crime stats did stick to that line. If they're below, please give me high fives. If they are above, please give me a high five again, because I can tell you that it's because people have now felt confidence in police and started reporting their crimes. And that's maybe why we're seeing a spark in the crimes. So I can't lose on this one. So, and then, well, that's what the cops said. So, I mean, they said we should be careful with this project because it might show a spark, because people are now feeling that, oh, we're feeling safe, and then they start reporting some of the crimes, because the number, I think, is only 25% of crimes are reported in our townships. Then like I said, we had these emergency center numbers. Again, you can see in terms of number of injured patients coming through the emergency center at our hospital there, as there's a decline, and then numbers of injured patients under the influence has also sort of started tapering down there, and number of injured patients assault have also started tapering down there. And why we look at assault, because we know a lot of domestic violence, a lot of assault is alcohol related. Now, how did we do all of that? So we're talking about design here, and I'm talking about this deliverology. This is the concept that the Premier introduced, run by Michael Barber in Tony Blair's second term. It's really just a methodology and a couple of tools that ensured that we track that government is actually playing whatever initiative that you put in place. You are tracking some of the initiatives. You're making sure that if someone is supposed to achieve X by a certain date, that they do that. If they don't do that, they're held accountable in front of the Premier. So it was a complete change of doing things. I mean, I've been our unit, it wasn't the most popular for at least the first 3 to 4 years, but now they started to see the value that we bring by looking at things a lot more detail. What have you done? By when? And this project was run in the same way. And then, so you need some sort of a methodology. Otherwise, you're smoking your socks if you think you're going to achieve anything here. And if you want to put money as private sector into these partnerships and run with government, I would strongly urge, and I'm not saying this because I'm lobbying for a job, because I was in the unit. I'm saying because I believe it. I seriously think you should attach a portion of your investment to this sort of accountability and delivery to make sure that things are actually happening on the ground, because we've got great ideas, fantastic ideas, right? Personally, I don't think we need more ideas. I think we've got enough ideas, but it's the execution of those ideas on the ground, because they do not land where they are supposed to be felt. The impact is not felt by the citizens because we are playing around in the middle here and not executing. I say, you say, So I think the execution you need, and something like deliverology, Google. Email me, ask me about it, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. Again, what we found worked very well was the collaboration. How do you, I mean, before I was in government, I never understood government. Government was the same thing to me. If I saw a law enforcement officer, to me, it was the same as a police officer. If I saw a police officer, it's the same as a security guard. You've got no idea. I've been there for 2.5 years, and you've got no idea how difficult it is to navigate within government. Okay, so how do you get South African Police Service, who, by the way, thinks that, so city law enforcement is in place because SAPS is not doing the, is this recorded? But I mean, just imagine sitting in a room and telling a brigadier or a colonel, and then with a chief director in law enforcement, who definitely do not see eye to eye, and I'm saying, guys, can we work together and collaborate and go work in Kailicha? You know what I mean? It was the worst part. I mean, I used to say, in my previous life, at least when we sat in a boardroom, we all agreed about one thing, profit and selling beer. But now when I sit in the boardroom, I'm sitting with someone that's got no interest, and then there's political parties. I mean, it gets really, but I mean, collaboration is critical. And the community here is critical, because you can't come into their community and tell them what is good for them, right? And so levels of government, collaboration. Then partnerships. I had to get the alcohol industry unrestricted to give me funds to run this thing. Unrestricted. I mean, that's unheard of. So collaboration is key. And then thirdly is this community ownership. Yesterday we were in Khayelitsha. It was the funniest thing, was the most amazing thing. ANC, DA, all working together because they want our project to work. And I mean community ownership. It's only because the community members have called each other together and said, guys, we want to change our lives. We don't care if it's the ANC or the DA that does it. So the lessons that we learned, one size does not fit all. Certainly, I think we need to revisit our regulatory framework. It's insane. I love the president. I really do. I really, really do. But when he comes in his SOPA and he says he's going to shut down every shebeen and tavern near a school, great. I love it. But is he going to be consistent? Is he going to shut down foresters? Is he going to shut down barristers? I'm just asking the question, what works this side of the world does not work that side of the world. Let's start thinking a bit differently to solve people's problems. Let's not use blanket approaches. President, I love you, but that was not right, and I'm going to write him something about that. Unless, of course, he closes barristers and foresters, then I'm happy. Then community ownership is a critical component of problem solving. We cannot do anything without those communities. Those people in those communities are the ones that know what problems they're faced with. It's not us sitting in my office running a few programs and deciding what's good for Khayelitsha. Government, civil society, NGOs, private sector must collaborate in addressing social ills. Gone are the days it's I'm less wrong, you more right. You know, we need to sit around the table and be quite open to being wrong. If you're not open, I mean, I was quite open. Listen, I had a very good laugh. I really did. But then I realized, you know, it's not. If I had been in marketing and sales, maybe different, but I was in corporate affairs, so I had to do the right thing for the company, and I believed that if we, and the one thing that really was the big issue for me, I knew the company's power and scale and what they could do. So when you know what people can do and then they don't do it, is a different case. So I really think we should collaborate. Communities are resilient, but I think they need enablement and empowerment. Town True Advocates showed us. They are resilient. They deal with this stuff daily. This is their life. We just need to, I missed the one session here to pop out quickly, but things like businesses in our townships. Let's give people zoning. Let people run businesses from the townships. It's all within our power. Government, local governments, let people run businesses. Because we don't have jobs. We're not going to create jobs. But let people run. Those businesses are booming in our townships. And then initiatives need to be results-driven. Only way. If we're not looking for results, we can forget about it. And with that, that's my presentation. Thank you very much. And I hope it's not another 4 years.
Hopefully not. Maybe move to this side of the mountain instead of being in Harpe, and then we'll make it closer. Sanele, Gaqa, everybody from government.
No.
Thank you for your hard work.
Questions,
Are you going to lobby Alan Winde to continue with the game changers into his...
So that happened yesterday. I can confirm. He said definitely they want to look into it. The new mayor as well, Dan Parter. So the new mayor and the new premier have sort of said it's going to be, well, not all the game changers, just the alcohol one.
Okay.
I don't know.
And still sitting in the premier's office, in the mayor's office, or dissolved to the relevant department?
If you could make a play for it, I might have a job. So